Chapter 424. Just like what noble consort Su's palace maid had said, the matter had blown up. Princess Min Xiang was Prince Rui's younger sister. How could he not have received the news? His people would definitely tell him immediately, and then he would definitely ask about it. However, Li Hongming's understanding of Princess Min Xiang was lacking. Coincidentally, he still had matters to attend to. In his opinion, it was just a capture, he could handle it however he wanted. It wasn't a big deal. Naturally, he didn't rush over immediately. When he received the news again, he immediately threw away what he was doing and rushed over. He was filled with regret. Therefore, Li Hongyuan understood their psychological state very well. He was very clear about what methods to use and what needed to be done. Prince Rui also wanted to strangle Princess Min Xiang. Looking at Princess Min Xiang, who was still unconscious and had a white cloth wrapped around her head, this wasn't the first time he had this thought. She had done such a vicious thing and damaged the imperial family's reputation. Now, she was even a one-eared princess. She was simply a disgrace to the imperial family. In reality, what Princess Min Xiang had done was nothing in their eyes. Whether it was noble consort Su or Prince Rui, the prerequisite was that they couldn't let the world know about it. For people like them, how many of their hands were not stained with blood and human lives? It didn't matter if it was done in private. If she died, then so be it. However, it couldn't be done in public. Even if she was just a servant who could be beaten and killed by her master, she would be accused of being vicious if it was spread to the outside world. What's more, she was of good birth and had 2 children. In this way, it wouldn't be too much even if she was condemned by 1,000 people. His mortal enemies would seize this point and attack him to death. They would say that it was his sister's doing, but they would want to pin it all on him. All of this would be erased if this good younger sister died. If she died in the hands of her son-in-law, there would be nothing to say. This was the price she had to pay for doing such a stupid thing. Li Hongming looked at Princess Min Xiang with a murderous gaze for a long time. The maidservants and nannies kneeling by the side trembled. In the end, Li Hongming didn't strangle Princess Min Xiang to death. Many people knew that he had entered the princess residence. Once he entered, Min Xiang died. Even if nothing happened, people would think that there was something wrong. Moreover, many people from that brother-in-law's family were still outside. Therefore, not only could he not do anything, but he also had to ensure that his sister was fine. However, it was difficult for Li Hongming to get rid of the anger in his heart. If he didn't do anything, he would be the one who would feel uncomfortable. Men, drag out all the servants of the princess and flog them 30 times. All the guards of the princess residence are to be flogged 50 times. Your Highness, please spare us, Your Highness. Everyone kowtowed and begged for mercy. If it weren't for Gu Shi's reputation, Li Hongming would have killed them. What was the use of begging for mercy now? Li Hongming's reason for dealing with these people couldn't be any more justified. When his master did something wrong, he didn't stop him. Instead, he helped the tyrant. He deserved to be beaten to death. All of them were dragged out. Soon, screams sounded in the courtyard. No one gagged their mouths. Clearly, venting was one thing, but it was more for some people to see. Princess Min Xiang fainted mainly because she was frightened. Therefore, she woke up very quickly. After waking up, that sharp pain instantly attacked her. Although her ear was torn off after she fainted, the feeling of being bitten was very clear. She subconsciously reached out to touch it. It was completely different from what she had expected. Her consciousness was instantly awakened. Even if it was wrapped in several layers, it shouldn't be flat. Princess Min Xiang's face was lifeless. She even ignored the pain. You lost an ear. Princess with only one ear, doesn't it feel good? You will be the center of attention in the future. Are you happy? Prince Roy sat by the bed and said emotionlessly. Princess Min Xiang screamed hysterically. She wanted to tear off the white cloth on her head as if she was crazy. Sometimes, if you don't pay attention to some small injuries, it will lead to death. If you want to die, then go ahead. You can just die like this. It seemed to be a provocation, but it also seemed to be the truth. Princess Min Xiang finally calmed down a little. She raised her head to look at Li Hongming. There was a trace of disbelief in her eyes. This person who spoke so coldly didn't seem to be the brother who doted on her in the past. He couldn't even compare to a stranger. He was more like an enemy. The fear of dying hadn't completely disappeared. Facing such a brother, Princess Min Xiang only felt extremely wronged. It was bad enough that he didn't help prevent her anger, but he actually spoke to her like this. Li Hongming, am I really your sister? You actually treat me like this? I will tell mother. Tell mother. If mother was in front of you now, she would probably beat you to death. You idiot who can't do anything right. What did you say? Princess Min Xiang pounced forward, wanting to scratch him. Li Hongming turned slightly and grabbed her arm, fiercely throwing her back onto the bed. It's fine that I spoiled you, but I didn't expect that I raised you to be so brainless. You are a princess, a golden branch and jade leaf. If someone did something wrong to you, they don't need to do anything. There will naturally be someone to stand up for you. It's fine that you did it yourself, but you even made a fuss about it. If you aren't an idiot, then what are you? This time, you caused mother and this prince to be so miserable. You still hope that mother will protect you. Without mother and this prince, would you still be the most respected among your sisters? You have offended many people in the palace. Do you know what it feels like to lose power and have people hit you when you are down? Princess Min Xiang was stunned for a moment. She probably didn't understand how she had harmed her mother and brother. Li Hongming walked forward and grabbed her hair, forcing her to raise her head. You still don't know what you did wrong. Princess Min Xiang had already realized it in a daze. However, what did I do wrong? It was that damn cheap man who deceived me and betrayed me first. He deserves to be chopped into minced meat. Princess Min Xiang roared hysterically. https://11/11807/8954609 HTML chapter error. Chapter 425. At this time, Princess Min Xiang finally felt some fear and terror. She also vaguely knew that she might have really done something wrong. The pain on her scalp also told her that this elder brother of hers was not as gentle and good-tempered as he usually was. That kind of coldness from inside out made her feel unfamiliar. Thus, Princess Min Xiang grabbed Li Hongming's hand in an attempt to relieve the pain, but her body couldn't help but tremble. Li Hongming let go of her and even gently patted her head, as if he was apologizing and comforting her for pulling her hair. Min Xiang, Imperial Mother protected you too well. She didn't let you know about many things and didn't let you participate. That's why you are so naive and ignorant today. I didn't think there was a problem in the past. You are a girl, after all, it doesn't matter if you are pampered. You are this prince's only sister. However, only today did I realize that I really made a huge mistake and regret it. Min Xiang, actually, living like this is an embarrassment. If you die, you can still make use of your remaining value. Princess Min Xiang might have thought of committing suicide when she discovered that her body was incomplete, but now that Li Hongming said this, she didn't want to die at all. So what if her body was incomplete? She was still a princess. She could still live a luxurious life. Even if others looked at her strangely, no one dared to say a word in front of her. Especially after experiencing the fear of death at the hands of the prince consort, she cherished her life very much. She didn't want to die, she definitely didn't want to die. However, the feeling that Li Hongming gave her just now was too terrifying. Princess Min Xiang also knew that if she went against him, she definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Especially now that there was no one else in the room other than the two of them. This elder brother of hers was constantly talking about death. She didn't know what would happen if she angered him. Imperial brother, I know I was wrong. I was just too angry and didn't consider the consequences. I didn't want to cause trouble for Imperial Mother and you. Believe me, Prince Rui naturally believed this. After all of Min Xiang's confidence came from them. She was just too angry to consider the consequences. It was because she had never thought about this problem. Speaking of which, it was their fault for giving Min Xiang the illusion that they had the absolute advantage. That was why she had been so unscrupulous. Moreover, even if he had told her about the serious consequences, she probably still hadn't realized the seriousness of the matter. Imperial brother, I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. You and Imperial Mother must have a way to solve this problem, right? As long as this matter is resolved, I promise to be obedient. I will listen to you and Imperial Mother. Imperial brother, Imperial Mother only has the two of us. If I die, Imperial Mother will definitely be sad. You won't have the heart to do that, right? Li Hongming listened coldly as Min Xiang acted like a clown in front of him. That's right. Even now, Princess Min Xiang still hadn't truly repented. She acted submissively just to save her own life. If she had really sorted out this matter, she wouldn't be like this. Seeing that Princess Min Xiang was getting stiffer and stiffer, to the point where she almost couldn't hold it in anymore, Li Hongming slowly said, Min Xiang, you better remember what you said now. If you do it again in the future, I will make sure you die a horrible death. Princess Min Xiang's body trembled. She could feel that Li Hongming wasn't joking with her at all. Li Hongming was thinking about something else. If Min Xiang died, this matter would be completely resolved. However, there were pros and cons to this matter. After all, the impact of what Min Xiang had done was already present. Even if this matter was resolved, the consequences wouldn't disappear. If accumulated, it could become a dangerous factor in the future. Li Hongming's men knocked lightly on the door. Your Highness, someone from the palace is here. His Majesty summons the princess and the prince consort to enter the palace. Understood. Li Hongming already had an idea. As for his Mufei, he wasn't worried. Even if he didn't explain the matter to her, she wouldn't make any mistakes. Change your clothes and prepare to enter the palace. Princess Min Xiang was afraid to see Lu Qingdi at this time. She subconsciously pulled on Li Hongming's sleeve. Imperial brother, what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? Naturally, do what should be done. You don't have to do anything. You just have to remain silent. Mu Fei and I will take care of the rest. Remember, if you still want to live a life of luxury in the future, then no matter what happens, you better keep your mouth shut. If you can't help but say something that shouldn't be said, Mu Fei and I won't care about you. Remember. Li Hongming's face was indescribably cold. Princess Min Xiang nodded vigorously. None of Princess Min Xiang's servants escaped punishment. However, as long as they didn't completely collapse, they had to crawl up to serve their master and enter the palace with their master. Princess Min Xiang needed to be tidied up, but it couldn't be too much. It had to be just right. After all, they needed to play the emotional card at this time. It didn't take long or short. When they saw Lu Qingdi, the eunuchs were still doing their own things. Lu Qingdi was still dealing with the mountain of memorials. Under the imperial table, noble consort Su knelt with a straight back but looked very weak. She clearly didn't cry or speak, but it made people feel extreme sadness. The fifth prince consort was carried in. He had lost a lot of blood but was still able to stay awake. It was a surprise. Seeing the black mass of people kneeling, either injured or crippled, Luchingdi's face couldn't help but darken. Then he smashed a pile of things on the imperial table. https://11/11807/89546110. Chapter 426. The Emperor was furious, but everyone kept quiet out of fear. Speak. What's going on? Think carefully before you speak. I won't give you a second chance, Luchingdi said expressionlessly. Because of this sentence, Li Hongming couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. As a father and husband, he wouldn't demote them, imprison them, or banish them to the cold palace because of this matter. However, if they didn't handle it well, they would lose the emperor's favor and the emperor's heart. He never thought that his imperial father chose the heir based on reason and not emotion. He favored Li Hongyuan, but he would never give the throne to him. However, Li Hongyuan was a special case. It was different for the other sons. The situation was very complicated, but it was absolutely impossible for them to completely lose the emperor's heart. At this time, imperial concubine Su was also very nervous. She was actually more worried than her son. It was far easier and more common for the emperor to abolish a concubine than to kill a son. Even a simple breach of etiquette in front of the emperor could demote a concubine and banish her to the cold palace. If there was no estrangement between her and Yuan, imperial concubine Su wouldn't even be worried at all. Thinking about it carefully, similar things seemed to have happened in the past. However, it seemed to be insignificant. Moreover, it disappeared because of Yuan. Because it didn't cause any waves, imperial concubine Su didn't have a deep memory of it. Now, those memories suddenly became clear. At this moment, imperial concubine Su wished that her relationship with her adopted son was still the same as before. Then, he might have already entered the palace by now. Therefore, at this time, imperial concubine Su actually thought of Li Hongyuan. How laughable and lamentable. Then, it was hard to say whether imperial concubine Su's true feelings for Li Hongyuan were because he was useful or because she received a return for her efforts. Or perhaps the two were intertwined. However, she met Li Hongyuan, who was reborn. Now that imperial concubine Su had no value, she could only suffer a tragedy. Of course, for someone like imperial concubine Su, no matter how much her heart churned, it couldn't be seen on her face. Outside, regardless of whether she was happy or angry, she would only show people what she wanted them to see. As she grew older, this skill became more and more profound. The problem now was that they had not colluded. The people below might not understand their intentions. If they spouted nonsense, the consequences would be quite serious. Are you mute? Luchingdi slapped the table heavily. Min Xiang, speak. Princess Min Xiang subconsciously trembled. She raised her head and secretly glanced at Luchingdi. Even though Princess Min Xiang wasn't a person who was good at reading people's expressions, she could clearly feel Luchingdi's coldness at this moment. Especially those cold eyes. It was completely different from what she remembered. Facing noble consort Su's and even Li Hongming's anger, Princess Min Xiang subconsciously didn't care. But Luchingdi was different. As long as he wasn't a puppet emperor, as imperial children and concubines, he knew very well what would happen if he lost the favor of the emperor. How many sisters and brothers had been bullied by her without the emperor's favor? There was nothing more frightening to Princess Min Xiang than this. Imperial father. With a bit of grievance and a bit of coquettishness, she put on the most delicate and naive expression. This was the appearance that Luqingdi liked the most. Min Xiang, have you forgotten that you are already a married woman? How can you be like this? Princess Min Xiang's expression instantly stiffened. She looked quite amused. After a while, she probably thought of Li Hongming's words and didn't speak anymore. She just sobbed weakly. She looked weak and innocent. Also, with the white cloth wrapped around her head, she looked quite pitiful. Luqingdi was indifferent. It was obvious that there were so many people in his harem. In order to win his love, they had used all kinds of methods. When he was happy, or if he was willing to love someone, no matter if it was his concubines or children, he could accept it. They didn't even need to do too much. But when he didn't want to accept it, it was useless no matter how much they did. Princess Min Xiang cried and didn't speak. Luqingdi also didn't continue speaking, but his expression didn't soften at all. What about the prince consort? Don't you want to say anything? Just like how he ignored Princess Min Xiang's ears and the marks on her neck, Luqingdi also ignored the fifth prince consort's broken arm, his deformed face, and his eye that was so swollen that it could not be opened. Actually, Luqingdi was a bit surprised by the fifth prince consort's pitiful appearance. But the anger in his heart suppressed everything. Originally, it hadn't been 2 days since the birthday. What happened on that day hadn't been investigated yet. The envoys from various countries were still in the capital. After all, after the birthday, they should be discussing the benefits between countries. For example, some cooperation, some trade, and many other things. When they couldn't do 2 things at the same time, someone actually caused trouble and made it known to everyone. They made a fool of themselves in front of the public. He used to think that his 5th daughter wasn't bad. Now, he knew that she was an impulsive idiot. Although he couldn't say that he knew what kind of person his consort was, it was really disappointing for her to raise such a daughter. In the current situation, the 5th prince consort indeed had the most right to speak. But he only felt that his entire body was cold. Even his bones were cold. His vision darkened and his broken arm seemed to be in so much pain that he couldn't feel it. His consciousness was also a bit blurry. Since Luqingdi allowed him to speak, he naturally spoke without any rules. He spoke intermittently, one sentence after another. However, since Luqingdi did not speak, everyone could only listen quietly. Even if there were no rules, everyone could still learn a lot of information. The 5th prince consort recounted his humiliation, his dignity being trampled on, and his anger. Ever since he married the princess, he wasn't like a human anymore. He was worse than a beast. As he spoke, he started to cry. He cried until snot and tears flowed down his face. He didn't have any image to speak of. The 5th prince consort was a young master of a large family. Although he was a bit cowardly, his upbringing and etiquette wouldn't be wrong. Looking at him now, it could be said that this man was really about to collapse. In the process of the 5th prince consort's narration, the one with the greatest emotional fluctuations was Princess Min Xiang. After all, she wasn't the kind of person who could control her emotions. Because of her rage, her face was distorted. The things that the 5th prince consort said most likely seriously challenged her authority. She almost exploded on the spot. It was only when Consort Su shouted at her that Princess Min Xiang calmed down. However, she no longer cried weakly. She kept her head down and her emotions couldn't be seen clearly. The 5th prince consort fainted in the end. His parents couldn't care much and hurriedly supported him. They cried their hearts out. However, they were still in front of the emperor and restrained themselves. They didn't let their emotions out. Luqingdi rubbed his throbbing temples and had someone call for the imperial physician. What is this about the prince consort having a mistress? In the end, this was the root of everything. Before Min Xiang got married, the imperial family didn't know. To put it seriously, this was deceiving the emperor. This was definitely a serious crime. However, everything still depended on how Luqingdi viewed this matter. Your Majesty, the prince consort has always been a coward. He has followed the rules since he was young and rarely did anything out of line. We didn't know that he had a mistress and had a child. He also didn't have the guts to say this. After marrying the princess, he originally planned to send everyone out of the capital and never see them again. However, the things that the princess did were truly. The prince consort's heart was filled with pain. Especially when the princess aborted the child without saying anything. The princess wasn't willing to give birth to a child for the prince consort and didn't allow the prince consort to have a child. However, we couldn't just watch the prince consort die. Your Majesty, our branch only had this one child. Would the princess be willing to adopt a child from the same clan? We had no choice but to let the mother and child stay for 3 days. The fifth prince consort's mother sobbed softly as she explained the matter. At this time, they didn't dare to lie or add fuel to the fire. Luqingdi's gaze fell heavily on Princess Min Xiang. What happened today? It seemed that he didn't intend to seek confirmation from Min Xiang at all. Imperial father, it's not like this. Could it be that you don't even trust your own daughter and trust an outsider? Princess Min Xiang was also anxious. Shut up. I don't want to hear you speak now. Where are Min Xiang's wait nurse and guards? Tell me one by one. If you hide anything from me. Naturally, no one dared to speak nonsense. The process of the matter was very clear. Good. You are truly my good daughter. I always thought that even if you were a little willful, your heart wasn't bad. I didn't expect you to be so vicious. https://11/4/118007/8954611 Chapter 427. Imperial Father, it really isn't like that. Believe me, Luqingdi's face was cold. He looked at Princess Min Xiang as if he was looking at a dead person. Clearly, he didn't believe Princess Min Xiang's explanation at all. Your Majesty, Imperial concubine Su struggled fiercely in her heart and couldn't hold it in anymore. What happened to Min Xiang today is all this concubine's fault. This concubine didn't teach her well. As she spoke, she sobbed. It was the kind of grief that was forced to endure. She was disappointed in Princess Min Xiang and blamed herself. Your Majesty, it's all this concubine's fault. Min Xiang has already been taught a lesson. If your Majesty wants to punish, then punish this concubine. It's the mother's fault for not teaching her daughter well. It's the mother's fault. It's the mother's fault. Imperial Father, this son is also responsible for this matter. I usually don't care much about Min Xiang and didn't know many things. That's why she kept making mistakes. If this son took some time to ask, even if I only found some clues, things wouldn't have reached this stage today. Li Hongming also had a pained expression. To put it bluntly, the mother and son were retreating in order to advance. In this kind of situation, not only could they not place righteousness before family, they also had to absolve Min Xiang. It wasn't just related to family. There was another factor. Min Xiang was a princess, the emperor's daughter. Don't say things like, a prince who commits a crime is punished the same as a commoner. That was only said for ordinary people. Otherwise, how could she be called a noble? Furthermore, she was injured by the prince consort. This kind of method wasn't wrong, but there was a prerequisite. It depended on whether Luqingdi would buy it. Princess Min Xiang's matter was a scandal of the imperial family. If all the princesses were like her, then the princesses after her wouldn't be able to find a slightly better husband. After all, no one was willing to follow in the footsteps of the fifth prince consort. Normal women were jealous and vicious. How could they be compared to Princess Min Xiang? Alright, the situation in the inner residence and the women in the inner residence, you could never underestimate them. Some people's methods were definitely worse than Princess Min Xiang's. Princess Min Xiang's biggest mistake was to make a big fuss and bring it to the surface. It didn't matter if others didn't know, but if others knew, it was a scandal and she lost the face of the imperial family. However, if Princess Min Xiang was dealt with like this, where would the dignity of the royal family be? We haven't said anything yet, but all of you are in a hurry to ask for forgiveness. Lu Qingdi was different from what they had expected. However, imperial concubine Su and her son did not dare to continue. In fact, this kind of dilemma made them feel uneasy for no reason. In short, one thing was certain, and that was that this was definitely not a good sign. The scene fell into a strange silence, which made people panic. Except for Lu Qingdi, who was in control of life and death, even the eunuchs felt a little suffocated. Until one of Lu Qingdi's trusted eunuchs came in. "Your Majesty, we've interrogated the other people in 5th Princess Mansion. It turned out that the other people from Princess Min Xiang's residence were also brought into the palace." According to the results of the interrogation, the eunuch paused. "The prince consort is a pushover in the princess's residence." The last 4 words were very soft, but everyone heard it very clearly in this quiet place, which showed that the people around Princess Min Xiang were still holding back. A pushover. Lu Qingdi tapped the imperial table with his fingertips. "The prince consort of Qi Yuan has fallen to this point. As for those princes, no matter if they were from the sisters or the daughters, Lu Qingdi was absolutely satisfied with no more than 3 of them." In Lu Qingdi's opinion, even if Princess Shang's future was ruined and many people were unwilling to marry Princess Shang, there were still people like the prince consort of Great Elder Princess. However, in his eyes, each of his sons-in-law was really a failure. Now it seemed that it was not just a matter of future. His daughter was not excellent and was really inferior to Great Elder Princess. In addition, with Min Xiang, it was no wonder that no one liked her. The daughter-in-law of the royal family was a member of the royal family, and the son-in-law of the royal family was half a member of the royal family. Even a cowardly man had dignity when he was insulted by a group of lowly people. No wonder he couldn't bear it and hurt the princess. To some extent, Princess Min Xiang deserved it. Lu Qingdi also thought that Princess Min Xiang deserved it, but there were thousands of reasons why the prince consort hurt the princess, no matter how much he paid for it. Prince Rui left his post without permission, regardless of the severity, and was fined 1 year of his salary and suspended from his position in the Ministry of Personnel. Princess Min Xiang was vicious and immoral. She reflected on her mistakes behind closed doors and was ordered to be re-educated by 2 etiquette instructors. Princess Wu Gongma deceived the emperor, offended his superiors, and hurt the princess. He was sent to prison without pardon for the rest of his life. However, considering that he was seriously injured, he was allowed to be confined at home and not allowed to leave for the rest of his life. Everyone in the 5th princess's manor did not try to dissuade the princess, but instead helped the tyrant. Those with low status were sent back to the Ministry of Internal Affairs for severe punishment. Those without low status were sentenced to 3 years of hard labor. As soon as Lu Qingdi's words came out, no matter how the people below felt, they could only say, "Thank you, Your Majesty." For the 5th prince consort and his family, this punishment was actually not a punishment. They should be crying tears of joy, but they couldn't be happy too early. The 5th prince consort's current situation was not optimistic, and he might be in danger of losing his life. Princess Min Xiang's face was ashen. If noble consort Su hadn't stopped her in time, she would have openly disobeyed the imperial edict. In reality, noble consort Su and Prince Rui wanted to strangle her to death. The ones whose hearts were truly bleeding were the 2 of them. For noble consort Su, the empress wasn't here, so the palace affairs were left to her and Qin Shu Fei. Now that Qin Shu Fei had fallen, she should be the only one in charge. Although there was still consort Wei Xian, as the former princess of Wei, she was just a decorative vase. This was definitely the best opportunity to plant one of their own. Now that she had seized power, she would be in seclusion for half a year. Of course, this seclusion didn't mean that noble consort Su wasn't allowed to leave the Jade Palace, but that she wouldn't have the chance to serve him in bed for half a year. Even if Luqingdi went to the Jade Palace now, noble consort Su would arrange for others to serve him most of the time, but that was the Jade Palace's favor. The seclusion targeted Luqingdi. He wouldn't be able to step into the Jade Palace for half a year. In the imperial harem, no matter how luxurious it was or how high the status of the concubines was, if the emperor didn't step in, it was equivalent to a cold palace. Prince Rui was even more sullen. Hearing Luqingdi's words, he was meddling in other people's business. He had thrown aside the important matters at hand to meddle in these inner court disputes, and directly lost his job at the Ministry of Personnel. He had worked so hard to enter the Ministry of Personnel, to gain a foothold, to know more things, and to have more say, but now it was all for naught. As for the people on Princess Min Xiang's side, who would care about them? Emperor, Prince Jin requests an audience. When Luqingdi heard this, the expression on his face eased a little. Not to mention consort Su, even Li Hongming couldn't help but reveal a hopeful expression. Li Hongyuan came in and looked straight ahead. Greetings to Fu Wang. Why did you enter the palace at this time? Luqingdi asked. I Ken heard that something happened to Min Xiang, so I entered the palace to take a look. You are considerate, but Zhen has already dealt with this matter. You should do what you should do, don't worry about it. Fu Wang, can a Ken know how to deal with it? What does a grown man care about these things? Quickly scram. Luqingdi waved his hand impatiently. https://11/118007/8968022 Chapter 428. Li Hongyuan hesitated and then slipped away. What did he come here for? Well, it was purely for show. Of course, it had nothing to do with imperial consort Su. It was for Luqingdi to see. Even if he was unhappy, he would still say that he was thinking about his mother. Then, he would give imperial consort Su and her son a little bit of hope and then ruthlessly crush it. Even if the two of them vomited blood, it had nothing to do with a certain king of hell. Even if they knew that he was acting, so what? Li Hongyuan didn't care at all. In fact, if he wanted to completely fall out with them, Li Hongyuan only needed to say a word. However, they needed him and didn't dare to fall out with him. Even if they knew his true colors, even if they hated him so much that they wanted to tear him apart, they didn't dare to do anything in private. To be honest, if it wasn't for the upcoming war, Li Hongyuan wouldn't care even if he completely broke the window paper now. As for whether Luqingdi would suspect, after all, the king of hell suddenly became obedient, Li Hongyuan naturally had a way to make his father feel that it was reasonable. Even if it wasn't reasonable, he would fill in a reasonable reason. Anyway, it wasn't the first time that Luqingdi had exonerated his son. It could only be said that Li Hongyuan's image had long been deeply ingrained in people's hearts. Especially in front of Luqingdi, he really pretended too well. Li Hongyuan paused midway and turned to go to the Sweet Dew Palace. Although the possibility of seeing the imperial noble consort now was very small, he still wanted to go and take a look. As for whether he would attract criticism by going to the Sweet Dew Palace for 2 days in a row, it was completely out of his consideration. Anyway, he was the king of hell. Knowing that Qin Shufei was awake and that Gong Jiu was performing acupuncture on her, Li Hongyuan directly went to the inner hall and sat on the same couch as yesterday. The moment their eyes met, Li Hongyuan knew that this was Qin Shufei herself. However, from her subtle expression, she probably knew that he had seen the Imperial Gui Fei. Logically speaking, Qin Shufei could accept that there was a ghost in her body because she knew that this ghost could not occupy her body. Now, it was different. The imperial noble consort had unintentionally controlled this body once. There might be a second or third time. This meant that there was a risk of the ghost taking over her body. Would she still be indifferent? Greetings to Imperial Concubine Shu. Li Hongyuan bowed. Although Li Hongyuan was a hooligan, he still had the best upbringing in his bones. He was meticulous in his appearance and perfect in his bearing. As long as he was willing, he was the best example of etiquette. No one could find any flaws in him, let alone any obvious mistakes. You may dispense with the formalities. Qin Shufei's expression was the same as before. There was nothing different about her. However, the poison this time had damaged her vitality. She looked a lot weaker. Qin Shufei looked like this on the surface, but it was hard to determine what she was thinking. After all, she had stayed in the palace for 20 to 30 years. Although she was not particularly favored, she was able to maintain her position without an heir. Her thoughts and methods were extraordinary. Controlling her emotions was a piece of cake for her. Li Hongyuan's eyes were sharp, but he could not read her mind. However, Li Hongyuan did not care about Qin Shufei's true thoughts. As the saying goes, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. This matter could not escape his control. Gong Jiu finished the acupuncture in his hand and stood up, greetings to Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan raised his hand, how is Imperial Concubine Shu's condition? Replying to Wang Ye, the current condition is still good. After careful recuperation, she should be able to recover 70 to 80%. Li Hongyuan frowned slightly, can't recover completely. This commoner is incompetent. In front of Li Hongyuan, Gong Jiu and the others never tried to explain anything. Wang Ye's requirements are too high. Even a divine doctor would be helpless. Gong Dafu's art is outstanding. If it was not for him, Ben Gong would not have been able to return. To be able to recover 70 to 80% is already quite good. Qin Shufei said with a faint smile. Qin Shufei also knew that Jin Qinhuang did not really care about her. Although he would still let people do their best to treat her, he would not personally care for her. However, this was also human nature. In the end, there was no relationship between her and him. Li Hongyuan did not say anything. After all, what Qin Shufei said was the truth. Wang Ye, he entered the palace today. Qin Shufei did not linger on this point and changed the topic. There was nothing to hide about Princess Min Xiang and the fifth prince consort's matter. Even if Lu Qingdi gave a gag order, at most, he would not let the common people know about the follow-up. Princess Min Xiang's arrest with great fanfare and the parade through the streets, how many people saw it? And what happened in the Princess Fu, to be honest, although the princess did not have any role in the fight for the throne and basically did not participate, it did not mean that these people would be completely ignored. Therefore, the Princess Fu, to some extent, was a sieve. There were not too many loopholes. Therefore, this matter could not be hidden from the fifth prince consort's family. After Qin Shufei finished listening, she looked at Li Hongyuan and smiled, but did not say anything. Obviously, in her view, this matter was Li Hongyuan's handiwork. As for the result of Lu Qingdi's punishment, she believed that she would know very soon. There was no need to inquire about anything. Li Hongyuan's main purpose was to see if he could still see his biological mother. Since he could not see her, there was nothing to say to Qin Shufei. Naturally, he prepared to leave. Nyang, rest well. I will take my leave first. Qin Shufei nodded, but hesitated. Wang Ye, please take care. Even if it's for, no matter who it is. Li Hongyuan naturally understood. Looking at the meaning, Qin Shufei did not seem to have any grudges. Nyang Nyang, rest assured. Ben Wang cherishes his life very much. After leaving the Sweet Dew Palace, Li Hongyuan was somewhat silent on the way out of the palace. Although in Mu Gonggang's eyes, he did not feel anything different. After leaving the palace, he stood in front of the carriage. Just as he was about to get in, he suddenly turned around. Have you sent word back from White Dragon Temple? Replying to Your Highness, Master Liaochen is not at White Dragon Temple. He went to travel again half a month ago. However, according to the abbot of White Dragon Temple, they received news that Master Liaochen will return in 3 to 5 days. Master Liaochen also said in the letter that if an esteemed guest is looking for him, they should be patient, said an E. No matter how one looked at it, the latter part of the letter seemed to have been specially sent for Li Hongyuan. Otherwise, the abbot would not have sent Li Hongyuan's people to send back such a message. Moreover, Master Liaochen had always been elusive. Every time he traveled, he would travel for 3 to 5 months. It was common for him to travel for half a year. Now that he had returned in just half a month, it seemed like he had come back especially for Li Hongyuan. Although An Yi and the others did not know why their master was looking for Master Liaochen, they did not know. Li Hongyuan boarded the carriage and closed his eyes to rest. Regarding Master Liaochen, it was not easy to come to a conclusion. No one knew how old he had lived. He had a prominent reputation, but he was very low-key. However, he was a genuine senior monk, not someone who fished for fame. It was as if there was nothing in the world that he could not see through and did not know. Returning to Jin Qin Wang Fu, Jingwan was nestled on the couch reading a book. When she heard movement, she raised her head to see Li Hongyuan coming in. She was a little surprised. Yuan, you're back so soon. It's just a trip around. It's nothing much. How long could it take? Thinking about it, it was also true. It was just a trip around. How did it go? I don't know the specifics. I was a step late, so I didn't bother to inquire. However, Fu Wang's mood is not good and can't be helped. You were deliberately a step late and went too early. Are you going to plead for leniency or not? If you plead for leniency, you'll be sullen. If you don't plead for leniency, Fu Wang will suspect that you're really cold-blooded and heartless. Wouldn't it be better to wait until the matter is settled before going? It'll be over. Jingwan had an expression that said she had already seen through him. Li Hongyuan laughed in spite of himself. He sat down next to Jingwan and pulled her into his arms, stroking her hair. Whatever Wan says, it's what it is. Towards Li Hongyuan's attitude that was like coaxing a child, Jingwan was too lazy to roll her eyes. She nestled in his arms and prepared to continue reading. That's right, Wan, in a few days, we'll go to White Dragon Temple. Going to White Dragon Temple at this time, is there a reason? There's something I need to talk to Master Liaochen about. I'll tell you the details later. The only thing that Li Hongyuan was still hiding from Jingwan was probably his rebirth. It wasn't that he didn't want to tell her, nor was it that he couldn't tell her. It was just that in his opinion, the time wasn't right yet. At the very least, he should wait until Wan had passed the death tribulation and everything was settled. Moreover, Li Hongyuan was a little narrow-minded. Didn't his sweetheart not tell him about her special experience? Therefore, he could only postpone any matters related to it. Just like yesterday, when her husband asked her to leave to speak with Qin Shufei alone, Jingwan didn't think much of it. Having 1 or 2 small secrets didn't mean that they didn't trust each other. However, is it all right to go to White Dragon Temple at this time? After Wan's birthday, the other country's envoys will need at least 10 days to leave the capital. Your husband is just an idle person. Everything has nothing to do with me. What problem can there be? Therefore, this was really a never-failing excuse. All right. Then how long will you be staying? I'll have someone prepare some things. I'm not sure yet. If things go well, I'll probably be able to return on the same day. If it's troublesome, it'll be hard to determine the time. Just bring some things. If it takes a long time, I'll have someone send it over. He had his own courtyard in White Dragon Temple, but it was a temple after all. Even if White Dragon Temple was prosperous, it couldn't change the fact that they were poor. If possible, Li Hongyuan naturally didn't want Jingwan to suffer in the middle of winter. Jingwan was really curious about something that even the King of Hell couldn't be sure about. The next day, Jingwan wore a more capable outfit, put on a cloak, and went for the appointment. She arranged to meet with the Gold Treasury's envoy at another building. It was a place where scholars often gathered. Of course, many noble ladies were willing to meet there occasionally. The environment was quiet and there were many books. Jingwan wanted to understand the Gold Treasury's culture, and the Gold Treasury's people naturally wanted to understand more about Qi Yuan, especially the envoy who was very interested in Qi Yuan's culture. Under normal circumstances, if they were alone, even if they could enter, they wouldn't be able to borrow any books. However, with Jingwan there, it was definitely different. As long as it wasn't some special books that couldn't be leaked, she could basically borrow them. In addition, that place was open and magnanimous, so it wouldn't arouse suspicion. Jingwan's carriage was more low-key. The symbol of Jin Wangfu was still the same. There weren't many people around her, but the people who served her were capable and the guards were also first class. When she entered the gate of the other building, Jingwan met several women. Two of them were the daughters-in-law of a certain Juan Wang's family, one of them was a county princess of the imperial family, and the other two were daughters of officials. One of them was the daughter of the Minister of Works. The man who became a first-rank official in his early 40s, in Jingwan's opinion, was definitely a capable person. Of course, his EQ was definitely high. In the officialdom, it wasn't good if your EQ couldn't keep up. When they saw Jingwan, they hurriedly greeted, "Greetings to Wang Fei Nyang." No need for formalities. Jingwan gathered her cloak and chuckled, "It's quite unexpected to meet you on such a cold day." Several people also laughed, "Isn't Wang Fei Nyang the same? Is Nyang also here to admire the plum blossoms?" "That's not it. We're just interested in the Gold Treasury's culture, so we made an appointment with the Gold Treasury's envoy. We didn't know about the plum blossoms in this Four Directions resort before." Chapter 429. Everyone's eyes lit up. To be honest, it was difficult for women to not be interested in those who knew something about the hidden gold, especially these noble ladies. However, they didn't dare to show their interest openly. Not only that, if they mentioned it openly, they would be reprimanded and ostracized, which was in line with the rules. Your Highness has only lived in the capital for a short period of time, so it's not surprising that you don't know about it. Speaking of which, the plum blossoms in the square courtyard can be considered a scenic spot in the capital, especially in winter. There are many people who come here to admire the flowers. Although they are mostly white plum blossoms, the quality is quite good. It's a good choice for poetry or painting. If that's the case, then I'll have to take a good look today. However, speaking of plum blossoms, I heard from my grandfather that Minister Zhong's family has the most complete variety of plum blossoms, and there are many rare and famous ones. Every winter, Miss Zhong will be able to feast her eyes. Jingwan's gaze fell on the woman in the warm yellow dress. "Your Highness, you're too kind. Father does have a lot of plum blossoms, but he's really stingy. It's good enough that he'll let us see them once every 3 to 5 days. If you want to break off a branch and put it in a vase, then don't even think about it." A few years ago, I secretly broke off a branch, and as a result, I was beaten in the palm of my hand and had to kneel for an hour. Every winter, my brothers and sisters want to invite good friends to a banquet to admire the plum blossoms, but they think that we're stingy. In fact, it's my father who doesn't allow it at all. He values those plum blossoms more than us, his children and grandchildren. Everyone says that the younger son is the eldest grandson, but in our family, my eldest nephew is ranked behind the plum blossoms in my father's heart. Everyone covered their mouths and laughed. However, that was the Minister of Works after all, so they naturally didn't know how to respond. Jingwan walked in unhurriedly, and these people surrounded her without any intention of leaving. Jingwan roughly understood their intentions, at least it wasn't convenient for them to say it out loud. It wasn't a shameful thing to meet the envoys of the Hidden Gold Kingdom. It wouldn't be a problem to have a few more people around. Therefore, Jingwan didn't say anything and chatted with them. They had talked about plum blossoms earlier, and now they were talking about plum blossoms. The others looked at each other. Obviously, they didn't think that Jingwan didn't know what they meant. Looking at her attitude, it was obvious that she tacitly agreed. They smiled tacitly. When it comes to raising flowers and plants, Princess Consort is the most qualified to speak. My father praised her more than once and admitted defeat. Especially when he saw the borrowed Kun Fong Chiu from Lord Luo. There was a period of time when he spent all his free time in it. According to my father, it's not easy to borrow the Kun Fong Chiu from Lord Luo. If you don't quickly finish reading it and return it, don't expect to get another one. I also secretly took a look at it twice. It's really well written and the inserts inside are also exquisite. Miss Zhong's gaze fell on Jingwan. Her meaning couldn't be more obvious. It must be said that this woman's things wouldn't easily leave the inner residence. However, those were only her elders. Moreover, the book was taken out from Luo Peishan's hands. After leaving the inner residence, she had to return it the same way. Thus, there was no taboo. Jingwan said modestly, "If Miss Zhong likes it, I'll give you 2 books of beauties later." That Miss Zhong was pleasantly surprised. Influenced by her old man, although she couldn't say that she was addicted to this aspect, she indeed liked it very much. However, she was still a bit hesitant. It must be known that Jin Qinhuang Fei's Chuanxiang chart was quite popular within a certain range. It couldn't be easily obtained. Borrowing a copy to take a look was far from being comparable to the original. For people who always strived for perfection, after seeing the original, they didn't want to copy this product. It was only meticulously crafted by Her Highness, not really. I usually have a lot of free time, and when I raise those flowers and plants, I have a habit of organizing the process and compiling it into a book. Then I'll have to thank esteemed Wang Fei. Miss Zhong's face lit up with joy. When she returned, she could show off to her father. At that time, her father would be envious. If the benefits were not enough, he would not even look at it. If the benefits were enough, he would definitely not give it to him. "You're welcome." Jingwan chuckled. What an innocent and unaffected girl. Fortunately, she was not taken by Prince Kong. Even if the marriage was delayed because of this, even if it was delayed for 1 or 2 years, it was still better than jumping into that fire pit. It must be said that Jingwan's ability in this aspect was something that other people had more or less heard about. Raising flowers and plants, although not everyone liked it very much, but for people like them, it was normal to have 1 or 2 pots on hand. At this time, they naturally asked Jingwan. Jingwan was also not stingy. She told them everything she knew and told them some tips. She didn't say much, but the people who listened benefited a lot. Because they had already arranged a place, although Jingwan was not familiar with this place, she could casually call for someone in the pavilion to lead the way. However, there was a ready-made guide now. It was naturally not suitable to be outside in the middle of winter. According to Jingwan's identity, it was not a problem to reserve a private room. Although there were many people in this kind of place, there would always be a reserved place prepared for high officials and nobles. Jingwan's privilege was more than enough. The private room here was different from the nashi room in the restaurant. It was not completely closed, but was separated by a treasure pavilion. Occasionally, there were some screens and some other decorations. It looked elegant and charming. When Jingwan saw it for the first time, she was a little surprised. The people from Cangjin had already arrived. There were 3 people. Jingwan stepped forward. The people who were with her consciously went to the side. It was enough to eavesdrop, there was no need to participate. At the birthday banquet, Jingwan could be considered to be in the limelight, in various senses. Therefore, when facing the envoys from Cangjin, there was naturally no, "Who are you?" situation. Greetings to Prince Consort Jean. When the 3 of them saw her, they hurriedly stood up to greet her. In Cangjin, they were just officials. They were very respectful to the royal family. In front of the prince consort of Qiyuan, they naturally did not dare to be arrogant. Greetings to the 3 envoys. Jingwan returned the greeting. Then, she took off her cloak and handed it to the servant. The 4 of them sat down. Because of a little selfish reason, I took the liberty to disturb you. I hope it didn't cause you any trouble. Jingwan said as she looked at the 3 of them. Compared to Qiyuan, Cangjin's clothing was much simpler. The embroidery was also unique. In Jingwan's opinion, it was more like a certain ethnic group in her previous life. There were no complicated accessories on their heads. Instead, they wore a square hat inlaid with gems. Moreover, they did not look very old. Even the person in charge should be less than 40 years old. As for the remaining 2, one of them had a tender face. It was unknown if he was really young or just looked young. As for the other one, based on the greeting just now, he was tall and had a darker complexion. His hands also looked rough and powerful. If he guessed correctly, he should be a military general, and the kind with a high status. Princess Consort, you are too serious. Cangjin's female envoys are the most leisurely when they are on diplomatic missions. The person in charge of Cangjin said with a smile. There are benefits to being leisurely. Just like now, other countries don't have this blessing. The woman with a tender face next to her said. She was drinking tea with a smile. Obviously, she liked this tea very much. It was said that Sifang Villa also had a lot of good tea. The woman who might be a military general also agreed without hesitation. Jingwan also smiled. She could tell that the 3 of them were emotional people. At least, they were so when it came to non-official matters. Indeed, on such a day, it's natural to stay in a warm place and drink tea, read books, or play chess. It's the best place. Because the atmosphere at the beginning was more relaxed and cheerful, the conversation became smoother and smoother. The woman with a tender face was probably a loyal fan of Qiyuan culture. She came here because of the books in Sifang Villa. Jingwan called for the female servant beside her and asked her to bring the woman to read the books. The remaining 3 people exchanged the customs and culture of the 2 countries. They were neither too fast nor too slow. There was a sense of joy and contentment in it. The 2 people from Cangjin also realized that the princess consort of Qiyuan seemed to be different. Logically speaking, the cultural background of the 2 countries was very different. Because of the internal problems of Cangjin, women had their own way of living. For example, there were many women in Qiyuan who were completely dependent on men. Therefore, there was nothing unacceptable about the women from Qiyuan. On the other hand, some of the ideas of Cangjin should be very impactful to the women from Qiyuan. They should be curious, yearning, and have some deep-rooted ideas of their own. It should not be easy for them to accept it. However, this princess consort did not seem to be different at all. She accepted it well and talked cheerfully. It made them think that the princess consort in front of them was a woman from Tsang Jin's royal family who was as ambitious as them. The two of them looked at each other. Obviously, they saw the same thing in each other's eyes. Chapter 430. Although Jingwan wasn't as knowledgeable as Li Hongyuan, she definitely knew a lot of things. Especially with a truly knowledgeable teacher like Li Hongyuan, she wouldn't lose to anyone when it came to discussing relevant topics. Moreover, she was the most qualified person to chat with. One would forget about the difference in status between them and be happy both physically and mentally. After half a day, not only did the hidden gold envoys feel incomparably carefree, they also had the intention of treating Jingwan as a confidant. Even the noblewomen of Qi Yuan who were listening in on the conversation had a new understanding of Jingwan. In fact, their deepest understanding of Jingwan was from what they had heard. Jealous woman, poisonous woman, with a heart as poisonous as snakes and scorpions. In short, there were few positive things about her. However, after a short period of interaction and careful observation as a bystander, they really couldn't see that she was very good at keeping up appearances. If it was said that her level had reached the point of perfection and most people wouldn't be able to see it, then it seemed unlikely. After all, Jean Qin Wang Fei's age was there, she hadn't married into the Wang Fu for long, Jean Qin Wang also didn't have any other women, and the Luo family style was also there. Without external factors, how big was the possibility of her becoming a two-faced and vicious person in such a short period of time? Thinking about it carefully, the possibility of it being a false rumor was the biggest. Wasn't there a different version of the previous incident later on? Stay away from Jean Qin Wang Fei to avoid being affected. Wasn't that what mothers-in-law would say? The former was obviously for her son, to prevent her daughter-in-law from making trouble in her son's backyard. The latter was obviously for her daughter. Only virtuous could have a better foothold in her husband's family. Wang Fei is so happy that she doesn't miss home. A low and pleasant male voice suddenly interrupted. Jingwan turned her head and saw the incomparably handsome living Yama standing next to the many treasures pavilion. Handsome and elegant, he was charming no matter how one looked at him. Jingwan smiled, "Why is Wang Ye here?" Then, when the others hurriedly stood up to greet her, Jingwan seemed to have realized that she had to stand up. Naturally, she had to greet after the others. This scene was a bit conspicuous. Li Hongyuan didn't feel that something was wrong at all. He took 2 steps forward and personally helped Jingwan up. You stayed in the Four Quarters villa, leisurely and carefree. You completely forgot about this prince and this prince's estate. This prince missed you deeply, but I couldn't find you. This prince had no choice but to find you myself. His words were quite straightforward. Jingwan wanted to pinch him, but she held back. She smiled and pretended not to hear him. There were also rumors that Jean Qin Wang loved his Wang Fei. Looking at the current situation, they were afraid that it wasn't groundless. After all, what kind of person was the king of hell? Everyone was very clear about it. If he didn't want to do something, no one could force him. Moreover, he didn't care about his reputation, so naturally, he wouldn't put on an act because of his reputation. Looking at Jean Qin Wang's Wang Fei, the intimacy and joy when she saw Jean Qin Wang was also not the least bit fake. But wasn't it a bit too unreserved? In contrast, the Tsang Jin's envoys were in a completely different state. They didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the way husband and wife got along. For them, this was the norm. But those husband and wife walking together, one in front and one behind, one in the back, one in the front and one in the back, one in the back, one in the front and one in the back, one in the back. In their eyes, it was a very strange thing. Husband and wife, they were the most intimate people in the world. Jean Qin Wang Yi and Wang Fei Nyang Nyang's relationship is really good. The Tsang Jin's envoy said so, appearing very sincere. Li Hongyuan was the kind of person that if you complimented him and said how good he was, he probably wouldn't even look at you. But if you said that Jingwan was good, or that their relationship as husband and wife was good, it would probably please him. Because of this, he gave the Tsang Jin's envoys a look. You can choose a part of the books to take away from Qi Yuan. The Tsang Jin's envoys were overjoyed. There was nothing more to be happy about than this. Although some of the books that they wanted the most probably couldn't be taken away, it didn't mean that the books that could be taken away were useless. Moreover, with a good start, there may be opportunities in the future. Seeing Li Hongyuan's actions at the birthday banquet, they didn't doubt the authenticity of his words. Many thanks to Jean Qin Wang. The three people said in unison. Li Hongyuan nodded indifferently and turned to look at Jingwan. It's late now, let's go back. Outside, Jingwan didn't want to brush away Li Hongyuan's face. Besides, they had been out for a long time today, it was time to go back. Listen to Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan naturally reached out to hold Jingwan's hand. Ben Wang will take his leave first. Respectfully sending off Jean Qin Wang Yi and Wang Fei. Wait until Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan out, put on a cloak, put on a hand warmer, and then returned to Jean Qin Wang Fu. Jingwan secretly thought that she was still too naive. According to Li Hongyuan's words, since they came to Sifangbi Mansion, it would be a pity if they didn't go and admire the blooming plum blossoms. Jingwan wanted to say, if you want to admire the plum blossoms, just say it. What's the point of saying go home? But criticism was criticism. Jingwan quite liked this kind of opportunity to get along. Although there were a lot of plum blossoms in the Wangfu, and Jingwan estimated that the variety and quantity should not lose to Minister Zhong's collection, but no matter how big her own home was, it was still her own home. The feeling of visiting her own home and admiring the scenery outside were two different things. Although the variety of plum blossoms here are ordinary, they are indeed well maintained. In fact, for people like Jingwan, whether they were famous or not was not important. There were a lot of flowers and plants that she would not dislike just because they were not rare and were not well known. Li Hongyuan was non-committal. Although because of his relationship with Jingwan, he was also very knowledgeable about these flowers and plants, but in his heart, he did not really like these. Jingwan also knew what Li Hongyuan was thinking, but she did not mind. No one stipulated that two people with the same mind must like the same thing. In Jingwan's view, Li Hongyuan was actually better. He was willing to change for the other party, and also willing for the other party to change himself for you. However, that kind of change was only for the two of them to get along, and not for the other party to change themselves beyond recognition. After all, if they did that, it was equivalent to becoming a completely different person. In Jingwan's view, there was no need to love the house and its crow. As long as there was no rejection, it was fine. Clearly, he did not like it that much, but he was willing to do it for the other party. What could be more touching than this? Jingwan handed the hand warmer in her hand to the servant girl, and then went down the corridor. She casually grabbed a small ball of snow and threw it at Li Hongyuan with a smile. The snowball brushed past Li Hongyuan's shoulder as it flew past. Li Hongyuan tilted his head and looked at his shoulder, then looked at Jingwan and slightly raised his eyebrows. Then, he directly took off his cloak and casually threw it out, and walked towards Jingwan. Jingwan hurriedly retreated. Hey, I didn't hit you. Your Highness is a big man, do you still want to take revenge? At such a close distance, there was only one reason why such a big man like Li Hongyuan could not hit her, and that was because she did not want to hit him. Li Hongyuan slowly grabbed a ball of snow and even pinched it a little, making the snowball hard. Looking at his actions, it seemed like he really wanted to take revenge. Jingwan hurriedly hid behind the plum trees and stood behind them. She tilted her head and smiled at Li Hongyuan, with a bit of provocation in her eyes. Li Hongyuan casually threw it out, and with a bang, it exploded on the plum tree in front of Jingwan, splashing a few pieces of ice on Jingwan's body. It was so cold that Jingwan shivered. "Hey, bastard, are you serious?" Jingwan moved 2 steps away and also grabbed a ball of snow. "Let's fight." After that, the two of them started to play in the plum trees. Compared to Jingwan, who was dodging left and right, she was a little embarrassed. Although she wanted to avoid Li Hongyuan, she still occasionally fell on Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan was simply taking a leisurely stroll. He even looked slow, but every time he hit the target, he could accurately hit the target. Although he did not hit Jingwan once, Jingwan always had the illusion that he was just a hair away from hurting her severely. Naturally, she instinctively dodged, and without a doubt, she was even more embarrassed. Although Jingwan was embarrassed, she was smiling very happily. She had already started to sweat from running and dodging like this. Whether it was the Tibetan gold envoys or the noble ladies of Qi Yuan, they all heard about the real situation of the couple who had returned home. They could not help but be curious and came to take a look. From afar, when they heard the happy voices and saw the vague figures, they felt a little complicated in their hearts. "I'm not playing anymore." "Ah, Yuan, you did it on purpose." Chapter 431. Li Hongyuan casually threw away the snowball in his hand and walked unhurriedly towards Jingwan. "If I did it on purpose, you would have cried a long time ago." As he spoke, he brushed away the ice shards that had splashed on Jingwan's body. Because his hand was holding a snowball, it was very cold, so he did not touch her skin. His gaze fell on her hand, which was slightly red, and he turned back. "Why aren't you bringing your master's warm gloves over?" The so-called warm gloves were, of course, not the kind that had fingers. Although Jingwan could bring them over, those gloves were actually not very practical in the inner residence. Playing in the snow was considered to be in the category of severe frostbite, so naturally, a hand warmer could not be used. Li Hongyuan took it and carefully put it on Jingwan. During the process, he did not touch Jingwan at all. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan's actions. This was not the first time this had happened, so she was no longer as flattered as she was at the beginning. However, every time this happened, she could not help but feel warm in her heart. After Li Hongyuan carefully helped her and tidied her cloak, Jingwan's gaze fell on his hand. Without thinking, she took her hand out of the warm gloves and grabbed him. She moved closer and stuffed their hands into the warm gloves together. She smiled but did not say a word. Li Hongyuan was a little helpless. "Aren't you cold?" He felt that his hand was cold, but when he held Jingwan's hand, he felt even colder. Jingwan was speechless. Well, they were both cold, but a certain someone's hand was actually warmer than hers. Therefore, she felt that Li Hongyuan's hand was warm. She did not believe that a certain someone did not know this. Otherwise, he would have probably struggled out of her grasp the moment she grabbed his hand. Jingwan was full of smiles. "It's okay. It warms up faster this way. Let's do it together." Li Hongyuan lowered his head slightly and pressed his forehead against Jingwan's. Their breaths mingled. "Yes, we'll be together. We'll be together forever." Sure enough, no matter how much time had passed, Jingwan's heart would still race every time he did this. However, she definitely couldn't be blamed for her lack of self-control. She could only blame him for being too good at flirting. Not to mention that she couldn't control herself now. Jingwan even believed that in the future, a long time in the future, as long as he treated her the same, even if her hair turned white and her teeth all fell out, she might not be able to control herself. Jingwan raised her head, closed her eyes, and smiled happily. At this moment, she even forgot that she was outside, feeling the breath of this man, and her whole mind was only him. As a voyeur, if they only had mixed feelings before, then now they were shocked to the extreme. The relationship between Jin Qinhuang and his wife was better than what they had expected. For them, especially the noble ladies of Qi Yuan, they never lacked material things. Therefore, a husband who treated them wholeheartedly was definitely their life's hope. No matter how the man's reputation was before marriage, as long as he turned over a new leaf after marriage, he was a good man. Therefore, their subconscious view of Li Hongyuan had already changed. In the eyes of the hidden gold envoys, men didn't have any ability or power, because they, women, could be the pillar of support. They could support their men. As long as they treated them wholeheartedly, then he was a good man. In any case, in the hidden gold, the status of women was very high, but in essence, it still couldn't be compared to men. As a woman, after marriage, whether it was the marrying party or the marrying party, if they did things like having an affair, they would be condemned by the public. And men, even if they were married, if they hooked up with another woman, they would also be criticized. Unless the woman was strong and had great power, otherwise, they would just divorce and not give the man any serious punishment. Therefore, the powerless Jin Qinhuang was enough to be a good man. The two people stood there as if there was no one else around for a while. "Go back, don't catch a cold," Li Hongyuan said softly and kissed the tip of Jingwan's nose while he was at it. Jingwan nodded. Li Hongyuan hugged her, took his cloak and put it on. Then he raised his hand and hugged Jingwan in his arms with the large cloak. "I'm not cold." In Jin Qinhuang Fu, everything was the best. Feathers and so on, it was not too simple. I'm afraid you'll be cold. In any case, you won't get hot, right? Li Hongyuan said in a seemingly indifferent manner. Well, Jingwan didn't say anything. Under the escort of the maidservants and guards, the two people leisurely left Sifangbi mansion. In the eyes of outsiders, whatever Jin Qinhuang Fei was saying, she was basically smiling the whole time. From time to time, she would turn her head to look at Jin Qinhuang. The friendship in her eyes seemed to overflow. And Jin Qinhuang, although his expression looked cold, but if one looked carefully, they would find that whether it was his movements or his eyes, they were all abnormally gentle. Although he didn't speak much, he was actually listening seriously. Jin Qinhuang actually has such a side. It's really unexpected. A certain young lady in the group of noble ladies said in a daze. If they knew what kind of attitude Jin Qinhuang had towards his wife, then the number of people who wanted to marry him would be innumerable. Miss Zhong at the side glanced at her good friend. How could she not know what she was thinking? She hooked her lips and smiled. Perhaps it's the right person, not the right thing. Perhaps Luo Wang Fei just happened to meet his eyes. That young lady turned her head to look at her. After a moment, she broke free from her trance and also smiled. Who says it's not? Oh. Perhaps it's Wang Fei Nyangnyang's good fortune. However, Jin Qinhuang had offended too many people. When the new emperor ascended the throne, this good fortune would probably come to an end. They looked at each other and didn't say anything. It was good that everyone was well aware. Returning to the Wang Fu and entering the room, Jingwan hurriedly took off the cloak on her body and changed into a new set of clothes. Soon after, just as she was about to speak with Li Hongyuan, a secret report came in. The matter of Qin Shu Fei being poisoned at the 10,000 birthday banquet basically had some clues. Speaking of which, Lu Qingdi had sent people to investigate. Those people weren't good-for-nothings. So far, there wasn't any news. Instead, Li Hongyuan's people got ahead of them. In the end, it was still some people who stretched their hands too far and reached where they shouldn't. And the facts proved that Li Hongyuan's certain arrangements were indeed prescient. https://11/11807/9287141 Chapter 432. Since they knew the direction of the other party's attack, there would definitely be clues if they investigated. Have you investigated it thoroughly? Li Hongyuan continued to ask. Replying to Your Highness, we haven't completely investigated it yet. What we can confirm is that Imperial concubine Shu was accidentally injured. She wasn't the target of the person behind the scenes. The original target should be Imperial concubine Shu. That poisonous chicken also accidentally fell into the Imperial kitchen. That chicken should have entered the Imperial harem. As for whether it entered Imperial concubine Shu's palace or the person behind the scenes palace, it is still to be discussed. Speaking of which, if the mastermind behind all of this was really the Empress, then it was indeed a little unreasonable for her to have taken an overdose of rebirth. A woman who wanted to control the entire Qiyuan dynasty had no reason to not care about her own lifespan. Then, it was obvious that she, the mastermind behind all of this, had been schemed against. What was this all about? Who was the person behind the scenes? What was their purpose? Was it an enemy or a friend? However, the sickly Empress still had the energy to scheme against this and that. As expected, this kind of woman would only stop when she was completely dead. Speaking of which, it wasn't unreasonable to scheme against Imperial concubine Su. Firstly, although Imperial concubine Qin was temporarily in charge of the Imperial harem, Imperial concubine Qin was secretly in cahoots with her. Secondly, Imperial concubine Su, who was the real counterbalance to her, had fallen. Imperial concubine Su didn't seem to have done anything, and Prince Rui didn't expand, but in fact, she knew very well that this wasn't the case. After all this, she had every reason to make Imperial concubine Su fall with him. However, she didn't expect that there would be a flaw in the poisonous chicken that she had carefully raised. She didn't scheme against the person she was supposed to scheme against and hurt her own ally. If this was known, perhaps this secret alliance would be broken. From this point of view, the Empress might be a little glad that her illness worsened. However, when she woke up and found out about everything, she would probably vomit blood. That's right, the Empress hadn't woken up yet. Has the Luo family been dealt with? This was what Li Hongyuan cared about the most. Although Imperial concubine Qin was accidentally injured, Li Hongyuan was still a little happy about this. However, Imperial concubine Qin's poisoning might also hurt the Imperial noble consort, so his joy was naturally infinitely reduced. The Empress wanted to shift the blame onto Luo Peishan and also targeted Jingwan. Don't forget why Li Hongyuan defeated Empress Sunday. Therefore, the Empress was prepared to kill several birds with one stone. To a certain extent, she had angered Li Hongyuan again. Although he had taken strict precautions and nothing happened, the Empress accidentally got herself involved, but it didn't mean that what she had done could be erased. Jingwan listened silently on the side. When they were almost done, she opened her mouth. The Empress is ambitious and has the heart, so she should be more cautious. Even if the Imperial physician changed the dressing for her, even if the Imperial physician was someone worthy of her trust, the Empress shouldn't have accepted it so easily. What was the reason that made her believe? Or, in addition to the Imperial physician who committed suicide, is there another person that the Empress absolutely trusts? Li Hongyuan was thoughtful. Based on his understanding of the Empress in his 2 lives, the Empress was indeed a very cautious person. Even her confidants probably couldn't gain her absolute trust. After thinking about it, there was probably only one person who could gain her absolute trust. Li Hongyuan suddenly sat up straight, go and investigate the recent movements of old Madam's son of Dinghua Manor and the people around her in detail. Jingwan was slightly startled. Yuan, are you suspecting old Madam's son? But, is this possible? Even if old Madam's son and the Empress weren't close, they were still mother and daughter after all. As you said, even so, she was ranked first among the people the Empress trusted the most. Or is old Madam's son actually being used by someone? Li Hongyuan looked sideways at her. Wan, don't be impatient. Old Madam's son is actually a bit unpredictable. Li Hongyuan's words were not without reason. Take the death-free gold medallion in Jingwan's hands. It was originally in the hands of Dinghua Manor. In her previous life, Dinghua Manor didn't take it out, and since old Madam's son knew it was there, she also didn't take it out. When Dinghua Manor was destroyed, she peacefully accepted death. No matter how she looked at it, there was something wrong with it. What she thinks, everyone may not know. Moreover, the Empress was raised by old Madame Sunday. The Empress is such a powerful person. Do you think that old Madame's son doesn't have some ability? Chapter 433. What's the reason between old lady's son and the Empress? Jingwan asked. Although he didn't understand, Li Hongyuan still understood what she was referring to. Their views don't match. As far as I know, when the former Duke Ding wanted to marry the Empress into the imperial family, old Madame's son strongly opposed it. The relationship between the husband and wife was already bad, and even worse. In the end, it was old Madame's son who made a concession. She didn't give in to the former Duke Ding, but because the Empress made her own choice. As a result, old Madame's son, who originally cared about her eldest daughter very much, suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person. In fact, if old lady's son supported the Empress from the beginning to the end, then concubine Su and the others might not be the Empress's opponent at all. It's just that it's too early for old lady's son to cultivate her moral character, abstain from meat, and pray to Buddha. Generally, women in the harem like her rarely make such a choice. After all, she has been suppressed by others for a lifetime, and it's not easy for her to turn things around. How could she not enjoy the treatment of having the final say and give up her power without hesitation? Therefore, old lady's son did things that ordinary people wouldn't do, and she shouldn't be judged by common sense. However, if this matter was really done by old lady's son, then what was her purpose? She couldn't have killed the Empress, her biological daughter, just because the Empress was too ambitious and might bring disaster to Duke Ding's mansion and even the Sun family. To be honest, according to old lady Sun's attitude, it really couldn't be seen that she cared much about Duke Ding's mansion. If Duke Ding's mansion was destroyed, she wouldn't even blink her eyes. This was more credible. After all, according to her relationship with Lu Qingdi, she probably wouldn't worry about the destruction of the Sun family. Li Hongyuan gently stroked Jingwan's hair. Don't think too much about it. Everything has a cause and effect. We'll know when we find out the truth. It's useless to think too much now. You'll only be hurting yourself for nothing. Jingwan smiled. That's true. People like old Madame's son and the Empress are all capable people. Small shrimps like us might not be able to play with them. It's better to stay away from them, lest we get implicated. When that time comes, we might not even know what's going on. If you are a small shrimp, then what am I? Once someone used the term, this king, in front of his beloved wife, it meant that some of his emotions had changed. You are the king of hell. What else can you be? Jingwan replied with a smile. There's a saying that it's best to enjoy the shade under a big tree. You're that towering tree, and I just need to be the one enjoying the shade. So, Your Highness, work hard. Well, you just need to be a small shrimp obediently. I'll take care of the rest. Oh. In Li Hongyuan's view, Jingwan was really not suitable to play tricks. At least not now. As she said, she had no chance of winning against those people. However, things were not settled yet. Li Hongyuan would not let Jingwan participate. This had nothing to do with her ability. He just didn't want her to be in danger. The Empress wanted to scheme against imperial concubine Su, but she directed the spearhead to the Luo family. Jingwan was naturally very angry. However, if her husband went too far at this time, some things would inevitably be exposed soon. Although a Yuan didn't say it clearly, Jingwan could see that things were almost done. He didn't care whether it would be known now or not. However, as long as he didn't take the initiative to expose himself, Jingwan's heart was unwilling. Passive exposure would always bring trouble. There are some things that Yuan doesn't need to be impatient. It doesn't matter if you take it slow. Li Hongyuan naturally understood her meaning and smiled. 10 years is not too late for a gentleman to take revenge. The problem is that your husband, I, am not a gentleman. What's more, some people have touched the place that they shouldn't have touched the most. I understand what Wan is thinking. Don't worry, it's not to that extent. Although I don't care now, it's not so easy to dig out my bottom line. Okay, I was worried for nothing. Jingwan closed her eyes and leaned on Li Hongyuan as if she had no bones, pretending to be dead. Of course, Annie had already tactfully retreated. In the following 3 or 4 days, Jingwan's social activities inexplicably increased. She met with the Cangjin's envoy again. They had a pleasant chat and the relationship between them went further. So much so that the Cangjin's envoy joked with her and didn't dare to keep her for too long in case Jin Qinhuang came to the door again. For Jingwan, this kind of joke naturally didn't have any lethality. She was especially thick-skinned and showed off her affection. Then, she also teasingly asked about the other's husband. Before leaving, the Cangjin's envoy expressed his wish to let Jingwan join the Cangjin's entourage. Of course, both sides knew that this kind of thing could only be said as it was impossible. Qi Yuan was Qi Yuan. It was unknown how many years it would take before it could reach the level of the Cangjin. As for old Madame Sun, perhaps she hadn't found any news yet and didn't hear anything from her husband or the shadow guards. The next day, Jingwan packed up her things and followed Li Hongyuan to Bailong Temple. Li Hongyuan just went to Luqingdi and said that there were too many unlucky things recently. He wanted to go to Bailong Temple to burn incense and get rid of the bad luck. His face was almost written, Ben Wang is very annoyed, Ben Wang wants to go out and relax. Luqingdi's mouth faintly twitched. He, the father, didn't say that it was unlucky. He had the nerve to say this. His true feelings were so obvious. Did he think that he was blind? In the end, he waved his hand and asked him to get out. The order was to let his son burn incense and pray for him. In Jingwan's view, this was definitely a typical, good father. Not only did he agree to his son's unreasonable request, but he also helped him deal with the follow-up matters, so that others couldn't find an excuse to criticize him. Later, Jingwan heard from Li Hongyuan another reason why Luqingdi asked him to go to Bailong Temple. Luqingdi lit a lamp for the imperial noble consort in Bailong Temple and asked his son, Li Hongyuan, to add some incense oil to her. Jingwan still felt that it was ironic. Wan, don't worry. She won't take it seriously. If it was in the past, Li Hongyuan wouldn't say such a thing. Now, he was quite sure that no matter what Luqingdi did, whether it was affectionate or ruthless, she wouldn't be shaken at all. If they could use her to get benefits from Luqingdi, she would be very happy. Whether she'll take it seriously or not, we don't know. Let's not talk about it anymore. Should we leave today or wait until tomorrow? Let's do it today. It's so boring to stay in the capital and watch some people fight. Jingwan nodded. She had people prepare and left the capital. Li Hongyuan didn't know how to keep a low profile when he traveled. Bailong Temple wasn't far. Even if they traveled at a normal speed, it wouldn't take much time. When they arrived at Bailong Temple, the abbot personally led people to welcome them. When they settled down in Li Hongyuan's personal courtyard, they went to see Master Liaochen together. As the abbot, he wouldn't disturb Master Liaochen's cultivation unless it was absolutely necessary. Thus, he only led them to the outside of Master Liaochen's meditation room before taking his leave to do his own things. Although Master Liaochen was an unworldly expert, he still had the proper etiquette. He greeted the two with a benevolent smile. Jingwan hurriedly returned the greeting. Li Hongyuan didn't half-heartedly return the greeting. Master Liaochen's meditation room was very warm. It didn't have the hardships of an ascetic monk. Even so, it didn't mean that Master Liaochen wasn't devout. In Jingwan's opinion, he was old and had a Buddhist heart. There was no need for him to torment himself over such matters. No matter how eminent a monk he was still a mortal. After they sat down, Master Liaochen personally poured them a cup of tea. This is wild tea from Bailong Temple. The tea is snow water from a few years ago. I hope Prince and Princess will like it. They could smell the fragrance before they even tasted the tea. It couldn't be bad. Moreover, even if it was snow water, in an era without chemical pollution, there was no need to worry that there would be anything dirty in it. Jingwan took a small sip. She couldn't help but praise the tea. Good tea, good water, and the master's skills. As long as Princess likes it. Master Liaochen smiled. If it weren't for his clothes and bald head, no one would believe that he was an unworldly expert. He was too approachable. Li Hongyuan didn't say anything, but he took 2 sips of tea. It was clear enough. The snow at Bailong Temple is also very good. It's comparable to the peach blossoms in spring. Wan, go take a look. We can't let down the beauty. Jingwan knew that Li Hongyuan was here for business. Without another word, she got up and bid farewell. Li Hongyuan didn't waste time either. He took out the jade pendant. Master, you must recognize it. Master Liaochen nodded. So that's how it is. Chapter 434. Understanding dawned in Master Liaochen's eyes. So that's how it is. Li Hongyuan could tell from Master Liaochen's expression that he already knew the cause and effect of everything. That was why it was the easiest to deal with someone like Master Liaochen. However, there was one condition: he didn't involve himself in worldly affairs. If he did, he would become the most terrifying enemy. Even if he stood on Master Liaochen's side, as someone who was loyal to him, he wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. This was because a person like him couldn't be controlled. It didn't matter if you transmigrated or reincarnated, 10 times or 100 times. All foresight and tricks would be useless in front of him. Of course, anyone with half a brain would know that this was impossible. As the saying went, some people had to pay a heavy price for divining the heaven secrets. If someone could casually reveal or use it, that person would be sent to hell in a matter of seconds. Moreover, if one's heart was disturbed and he entered the secular world, could he still be called a master? Could that mysterious ability continue to exist? At least, Li Hongyuan trusted Master Liaochen very much and had never thought of asking him to come out of seclusion. In that case, I don't think I need to explain. Master Liaochen should know why I'm here. Master Liaochen nodded. Your Highness, you must have met the Imperial Noble Consort since you've come all the way here. What do you want? Master Liaochen was helpless against a demon king like Li Hongyuan. Therefore, he had to be careful about anything related to him. He was afraid that Master Liaochen would do something irreparable at the slightest provocation. Other than him, even Emperor Luqing couldn't do anything to him, let alone make a special trip back while he was traveling. Li Hongyuan held the teacup and took 2 sips. Even though it wasn't hot, it was still misty in the winter, blurring his expression. He calmly recounted his meeting with the Imperial Noble Consort and how he knew the reason for his reincarnation. No matter how powerful Master Liaochen was, he couldn't know the details. Ben Wang is thinking right now, can I keep her? Master Liaochen sighed softly. He knew that it wasn't very possible. As the saying goes, a life for a life, and the cost was often more than the gain. Even so, there were very few people who had this kind of opportunity. According to that imperial noble consort's fate, if she only extended her son's life, even if it was just for 30 to 50 years, it would probably only affect her life for the next several lifetimes, a life full of hardships, but she definitely wouldn't end up with her soul scattered. The reality was that turning back time didn't just change one person's fate, but many people's. It could even create a completely different history. Furthermore, there was such a ruthless person like Jin Qin Wang. Unless you were one of the gods, how could you be able to pull yourself out of this after doing such a thing? In reality, Master Liaochen didn't even know if gods and Buddhas really existed. The imperial noble consort was indeed special, but not to this extent. Moreover, this kind of thing was irreversible. Therefore, the benefits had already been obtained. How could he not pay the price? Li Hongyuan had already thought of this. He didn't express anything about Master Liaochen's silence. His current state of mind was still calm. Regarding the imperial noble consort, he didn't have to do it. Ben Wang doesn't care what happens in the future. As long as she lives the lifespan of a normal person in any way, it's fine. Li Hongyuan paused, otherwise, 20 years. When Li Hongyuan said this, Master Liaochen actually let out a sigh of relief. It wasn't because Li Hongyuan was backing down, but because his attitude showed that there was room for discussion. Wang Yi, the imperial noble consort, should have disappeared when time turned back. No matter if it was in your previous life or this life, once you've obtained benefits, she shouldn't exist anymore. The reason you can still see her is probably because her obsession is too deep. After meeting you, her obsession will definitely fade and then quickly disappear. In reality, based on her situation, no matter how strong her obsession is, being able to hold on until now is already her limit. Does Master mean that I'm powerless? If she can exchange with me, can't she exchange with others? If one isn't enough, then what about 10, 100, 1,000, or even 10,000, 100,000? Master Liaochen was most afraid of Li Hongyuan's actions. He didn't have any scruples and did whatever he wanted. Wang Yi, through the matter of the imperial noble consort, you should know that some things pay attention to karma. In order to extend the imperial noble consort's existence for 10 to 20 years, you've sacrificed millions of lives. You don't care, but have you considered Wang Fei? When Wang Fei married you, she was already connected to your life. Do you think that this kind of killing will not affect her? Li Hongyuan was silent. Between the imperial noble consort and Jingwan, it was clear that he would unhesitatingly choose Jingwan. Master Liaochen also rejoiced that Jin Qinwang had a weakness. A moment later. But, according to Master's meaning, exchanging lives is feasible, right? Even if she's special and can't be exchanged for everything, at least part of it, right? It was clear that Li Hongyuan wouldn't give up so easily. That's right. As the saying goes, monks don't lie. Master Liaochen naturally couldn't say anything that went against his heart. But this exchanging lives is different from the one between you and the imperial noble consort. Rather than saying that you're exchanging lives for the imperial noble consort, it's better to say that you're exchanging lives. Using someone else's life to replace the imperial noble consort's, letting someone else replace the imperial noble consort's fate of dissipating. However, there are two prerequisites. First, it has to be done willingly. Second, the life has to be similar to that of the imperial noble consort. The closer it is, the better the effect. Hearing this, Li Hongyuan's mind immediately flashed with Qin Shu Fei's figure. She didn't possess someone else's body, but happened to be Qin Shu Fei. Doesn't this mean that in this world, the range is too large? At least in the entire capital, their lives are the closest. Even with great Master Liaochen's temper, he felt helpless. What was this called? This was a classic example of biting the hand that fed you. It could be said that the imperial noble consort was only able to survive because Qin Shufei had taken in her. If Qin Shufei herself had rejected the imperial noble consort, the imperial noble consort would not have been able to parasitize her. But now, it was as if Mr. Dongguo's kindness had not been rewarded. Master Liaochen only hesitated for a moment, but Li Hongyuan had already gotten his answer. I'll think of a way to make this happen. When the time comes, I'm afraid we'll need Master's help. Master Liaochen naturally didn't want to do something that would harm someone's life, but he couldn't completely reject this king of hell. After some deliberation, he said, Your Highness, even if Qin Shu and the imperial noble consort's lives are the closest, that's only relative. Even if you succeed, it won't take long. This humble monk suggests that Your Highness tell the imperial noble consort about this. If both parties are willing, it won't work either. Li Hongyuan obviously understood what Master Liaochen meant. In his opinion, it was highly likely that his birth mother wouldn't be willing to let her know. But he didn't doubt the truth of Master Liaochen's words. Other than this, is there any other way? Yes. Set up 81 altars in Qiyuan. 81 monks will pray for blessings on each altar for 81 days, that's simple. It seemed like a large scale, but if they were spread out, it wouldn't be a problem. But wasn't it a little too simple? Your Highness, this is just a prelude. What we really need is the blessing of the people. The more people there are, the better the effect. The longest it can last is perhaps until Your Highness dies of old age. https://11/11807/9353212. Please wait patiently after reporting and refresh the page. Mobile edition. Chapter 435. Li Hongyuan frowned slightly. As expected, it wouldn't be that easy. The altar could be set up in secret, but the people praying for blessings definitely couldn't be hidden. How could it be as simple as mobilizing the entire Qiyuan? Even his so-called imperial father missed his birth mother in every possible way. Sometimes, he even acted like he was crazy and didn't care about anything. However, if he really wanted to create such a big scene, it would be very difficult for him to nod his head and agree. After all, no matter if it was the imperial noble consort or Li Hongyuan, there was a big prerequisite for his extreme doting. That was, it couldn't involve the Qiyuan Empire. When Lu Qingdi first met the imperial noble consort, he might have thought of forsaking the empire for the beauty, but that thought was very short-lived. After achieving his goal, it would have disappeared without a trace. In Li Hongyuan's opinion, it was harder to get thousands of people to pray for blessings than to kill thousands of people. Therefore, Li Hongyuan didn't consider this option. Is there no third option? Li Hongyuan asked mildly. Amitabha. Your Highness, if it's simple and doesn't cost anything, I'm afraid you'll be suspicious immediately. Master Liaochen was quite familiar with Li Hongyuan's temperament. Li Hongyuan nodded, indicating that he understood. Then he picked up the jade pendant and prepared to leave. Since he'd finished his business, he naturally didn't want to face a bald old monk. No one else could be more important than his wife. This was a classic example of throwing away something after using it. Master Liaochen was starting to wonder if it was really worth it for him to come all the way here. Your Highness, please wait. This humble monk can bless this jade. You can leave it with Her Highness Consort Shu and have her carry it with her at all times. It can stabilize and nourish her soul. Although its effects are limited, this jade is the best place to nourish her soul. Li Hongyuan handed the jade over. Just now, Master told this prince to ask her if there's a way to get her to come out and meet with this prince. This matter concerns consort Qin Shu, so I can't let her pass on a message. Imperial Noble Consort. Every time she controls Imperial Noble Consort Shu's body, it consumes a lot of her energy. The damage to Imperial Noble Consort Shu was not small either. Li Hongyuan sneered, if that's the case, why did Grandmaster say such useless words? It was impossible to have a proper conversation with someone like Li Hongyuan. Master Liaochen held the jade in his hand, closed his eyes, and chanted for about a quarter of an hour. Then he handed it back to Li Hongyuan. Give it to concubine Shu. Go see her in 32 hours. Li Hongyuan placed the jade pendant in front of his eyes. He didn't know if it was a psychological effect, but he felt that this piece of jade seemed to be more lustrous. Master, since this jade can nourish souls, does it mean that it is very special? People nurture jade, and jade nurtures people. If it's suitable, it can become a priceless treasure. If it's not suitable, it's just a piece of jade no matter how good it is. To put it bluntly, this piece of jade was extremely compatible with the Imperial Noble Consort. Li Hongyuan accepted the jade and left without a trace of politeness. Jingwan was wearing thick clothes and could be said to be fully armed. She strolled around White Dragon Temple. Because she was constantly walking, she didn't feel cold. The snowy scenery of White Dragon Temple was very beautiful and spectacular. It had to be said that White Dragon Temple was a place of great feng shui. Jingwan stood on a high ground. From her current angle, she could vaguely see a section of the river below White Dragon Mountain. Because it was too far away, it didn't look much different from a wide ditch. She couldn't tell if the current was fast or slow. At this time, Jingwan was in a daze. Wan, what are you thinking about? When Li Hongyuan found her, he couldn't help but ask when he saw her like this. Jingwan turned to look at him and chuckled. I'm thinking about my first contact with Ah Yuan. It really left a deep impression. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows. Wan, why don't you say it was intimate contact? It was indeed deep and memorable. As he spoke, he purposely licked his lips seductively. Jingwan narrowed her eyes. I remember that a certain someone didn't seem to have any consciousness and was in a semi-conscious state. Where did you get the impression from? How did it leave a deep impression? Could Li Hongyuan say that he didn't actually lose consciousness? Perhaps his self-control was very poor at that time, but he had all the sensations he should have and all the memories he should have. The feeling was indeed wonderful. However, this matter really couldn't be said. Jingwan was all smiles, but it was inexplicably a little dangerous. I haven't asked who Your Highness was calling at that time. To be able to make Your Highness have such a big reaction, it's really different from the person I know. Is it the white moonlight in your heart, or the cinnabar at the tip of your heart? If I say that the person I called was you, Wan, would you believe me? Jingwan snorted twice. Obviously, she didn't believe him. However, deep in her heart, there was a trace of strangeness that she didn't notice. Li Hongyuan showed a hurt expression. This husband has always only lost control in front of Wan. Jingwan didn't comment. Is it done? Li Hongyuan felt that it was a pity. In fact, he was waiting for Wan to get to the bottom of it. Although he didn't want to tell her now, whether he said it or not was one matter. Whether Wan asked or not was another matter. Every time there was a hint, Wan seemed to subconsciously avoid it, as if she was instinctively avoiding a forbidden area. Something like that. However, it's too difficult to implement. You can't reveal anything to me, okay? It would be a lie if she said that she wasn't curious. Not really. Li Hongyuan thought for a moment. I just want to do a great ceremony for her that will spread throughout the world and pray for the blessings of the people. It's not difficult. Even she felt that it was impossible. What's Wan's opinion? Create a celestial phenomenon, make the imperial noble consort a legend, the mysterious lady of the ninth heaven, and so on. If done properly, the effect will definitely be very good. https://11/11807/9353213. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.